We're back with Bill Whittle, when we've been talking about the Comedy Central special on guns. But the Science Channel recently had a show on guns too. Let's take a look.
Every virus spreads in its own unique way. Mosquitoes spread malaria. The common cold relies on a sneeze to spread its germs through the air. On the internet, memes go viral when they spread from person to person across a social network. If we're going to stem the epidemic of gun violence, we have to discover the precise means of its transmission. In Chicago, the police department is trying to do just that by launching a high-tech and highly controversial program to reduce gun crime. This is the heart of the operation. It connects to 29,000 surveillance cameras. It has microphones to record gunshots in real time. And the brain behind all of this is an algorithm designed to predict who is going to be the next victim of a gun crime before the crime happens. It was...
Wait, so now we're Minority Report?
Yeah, I was thinking about that myself. Yeah, Morgan Freeman's going to get in a giant bath, and then a little ball's going to come down the track. And yeah, exactly.
Well, you know, one thing really quickly about this piece that we just showed, you know, it's interesting. Everything is colorized as gun violence, and I understand that the violence in Chicago is largely committed with firearms, but you know, you would think that the issue would be to focus on how do we alleviate the violence in general that's going on in these areas. I think coloring it as gun violence every single time creates this false narrative of and attributing kind of an unearned vilification of firearms in the sense that they, you know, somehow walk up and do things on their own as well.
Yeah, that's what they do, by the way. They kind of fetishize the gun. They make it about the gun as if the gun was the thing that caused the crime in the first place. And the reason they do that is I think it's for two reasons, Colion. First of all, if it turns out that murder is caused just by the presence of a gun, if you get rid of guns, you get rid of murder. What could possibly go wrong with that, right? And the second thing is that they do not want to accept the fact that it's their politics that have led to these cities becoming such murder pits. It's 45 years of progressive or democratic control in Chicago, 134 in Atlanta, something like that. So let's make it about a piece of steel, and not about the you know, these giant rifts in the human heart. There's insanity, murder, all of this stuff's been with us forever. The idea that you can get rid of murder and insanity by throwing a gun into a volcano is not terribly sound logically, because there were murders before there were handguns. In fact, go back to the story of Cain and Abel, and murders were pretty much the first thing that came along as a social activity.
Yeah, I said. I always, I said it one time before in an interview, and I talked about how I think a lot of people fall for this type of nomenclature because of the theatrics of a firearm inherently. You know, the loud boom, the sounds it makes, the movement, everything is very explosive and violent within the context of the gun itself just being shot. However, I implore a lot of people to watch a stabbing. It is some of the most gruesome, hard to watch thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, I literally turned away and flinched. Yeah, that too. And it's interesting because yet and still we get distracted by the theatrics of the gun, right?
Well, there's something about that Morgan Freeman piece that I find interesting. Let me preface this by being very clear. The idea of living in a city where I'm being watched by 29,000 television cameras and audio mics is a little reprehensible and repugnant to me. But here's what's interesting about that particular program. It seems to me that for the first time, they're actually starting to try to figure out who's the perpetrator rather than let's just lock up the guns. Who is the most likely to be in a situation where they're going to be around gun violence? I don't know what you do with that information when you've got it, but just the fact that that program exists is an acceptance of the fact that it's not just random murders. It's not just the random person in Chicago is just dropped like a safe drops on his head in an old cartoon. No. The murder rates are very high among very small groups of very violent people, and if you were ready to start to go after that, that seems like at the very least seems like a step in the right direction in terms of the cause.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like the surveillance state, but it's an interesting thing to look at.
The surveillance thing bothered me as well. And sometimes I wonder, and I'm going to put my conspiracy theory hat on, if that's just another angle in order to provide another level of encroachment on our rights in this country that we get blindsided by later on down the road. Because I feel us ended up looking like what goes on in the UK for the most part, where any and every single thing is recorded. And of course, you know, people tend to have a very false sense of security when they know there are cameras around and they think that somehow that prevents crime. That still boggles my mind in many ways. So I'm definitely caught up in the same kind of conflicting ideas and feelings about, you know, in one breath, yeah, they are kind of turning the focus away from the firearm and focusing on the real issue. But then at the same time, then you begin to ask yourself, but at what cost? And then and to what degree of success? Go ahead.
I suppose that having television cameras everywhere would suppress violent crimes to some degree. Mm-hmm. But that's not the operational value, I don't think. I think the thing that the criminal is going to make his determination on is response time. Yeah. Right? If there are cameras everywhere and he decides to take somebody's purse or smash somebody in the mouth, get their wallet, and go running, it doesn't matter whether you got it on camera or not. What matters is, can you get law enforcement there fast enough to catch this guy? And when it's all said and done, Colion, this is the whole handgun argument in a nutshell. Can the cops get there between the time he draws the gun and pulls the trigger on you? Probably not. You know, it's, you know, that old line, you know, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away is really, really true. So even if you've got these cameras everywhere, you might be able to find the rapist, you might be able to find the murderer, but you're not going to do anything to stop them in their tracks. And that's kind of what we're talking about on this side of the aisle, I think.
Absolutely. And, you know, and I always say it all the time because a lot of people who like to argue from the other side about this issue and argue against the idea of firearms, they always come at me with statistics. They're like, well, why are you carrying a firearm? The chances of you ever needing it are slim to none. And I'm like, it's not about the whole statistic. It's about the individual statistic. And in that moment, if I have a 1% chance of needing this firearm, yeah, sure. If I'm never that 1%, then great for me. But if I am that 1%, that's 100% of everything in that moment. And then that's all I care about. I don't care about the statistic that says it's less than 1%. Well, God, bastard, I am a 1% right now. Like, just give me my gun.
Absolutely. And your chance of having to use your firearm, just as however microscopically small that chance may be, that chance is still orders of magnitude larger than the chance that you're going to make a water landing in an airplane, but they have life preservers under every single seat, don't they?
Yep.
They have them under every single seat because there is a set of circumstances where having this device could make the difference between life and death. They're never used.
Yeah.
I mean, ever used in serious case. I guess maybe with the Sully incident a couple years ago, they had them on, but they weren't in the water thrashing around. So why do we have these things under the seat? Why? It's because there could come a time when you need them. And if it's going to be your life extinguished, I'd kind of like to have the choice. You know, I'd like to have the option.
And it's a small price to pay for what the consequences would be if you didn't have it.
That's
you know,
right.
Like it's nothing for me to put my gun on and walk out of the house, have it on me right now. I haven't had any issues. I've been able to conduct this interview with you with no problems. My gun hasn't done anything to prevent me from doing that. So, I mean, why not? You know?
Well, I'm a pilot as well. And there's a saying that applies to gun ownership too, I think, in that micro moment. And the saying is, you know, it's better to be on the ground wishing you were in the air than to be in the air wishing you were on the ground.
Yeah.
And that goes to this idea of, maybe it doesn't ever come up. You hope it won't ever come up. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons you train for it is because you don't want it to come up. But if it does, you want to be ready. Yep. And it goes back also to what we were talking about with predators. I think criminals have it's a survival skill for them. They can tell who walks like a victim, who walks like a victim, who moves like a victim. They're not going to take chances with somebody who looks like they've got the confidence to defend themselves. They'll wait till the next sucker comes along.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, Bill, as always.
Me too, pal. It was great meeting you.
Absolutely.
Great meeting you back in Atlanta.
Hey, yeah, absolutely. Look forward to having you back on the show as soon as possible.
Looking forward to it.
But we've definitely run over time extremely. but you definitely have a good one, Bill, and you take care.
You too, buddy.
All right. That's going to do it today for this episode of Seeing Live. We'll be back Monday, 5 p.m. on NRATV. I'm Colion and Bill Whittle, and I'm out.